What's up, guys? For those that don't know me, my name is Thomas, and I have been doing CrossFit for about 9 years now. And recently, I have suffered a pretty serious shoulder injury. I was in the middle of a competition and snatched 205 and just externally rotated on that snatch, and my shoulder popped out and had an initial injury there. And then about a week later, I re-injured it as I was coaching wrestling. What I want to do is I want to document the process of the shoulder injury itself, kind of the findings before surgery, what surgery looks like, and then post-op. Everything from recovery to programming workouts to really the mental aspect of it, of how to kind of build back to a state of normalcy. Like I said, I've been doing CrossFit for about 9 years now. I was pretty competitive about 2 or 3 years into it and stopped that track a little while ago as I got into the professional world. But as of this past year, I started competing more and doing a lot more local competitions and focusing on doing more than just one workout a day. Now that I have suffered a shoulder injury, it's kind of set me back. My goals have now shifted to I would say, more practical sense of how do I get from immobility on the left side of my body to mobility, potentially back to full range, potentially back to exactly where I was this time last year, to potentially even better moving forward into 2025. So to start this off, I first injured the shoulder snatching at a complex of a power snatch, hang squat, snatch, overhead squat. I hit 205 in practice the day before the competition, and day of the competition, the lift was the last thing of the day, and I didn't take into account the culmination of the 3 workouts beforehand. And I went in there and kind of was too gung-ho, and it just externally rotated a bit more. I think I pulled it a bit too much and didn't get into good position, and it just completely popped. At the time, I thought it was just a simple tweak. I think the Training Think Tank podcast had an athlete on there that recently talked about tweaks versus injuries. Mine was a tweak. So a week goes by, I don't really work out, try to let it rest. Then I go coach wrestling at the high school that I coach at, and I post on it and it completely pops out. So I had to get it reset. And at that time, I had seen a chiropractor, buddy, who does a lot of body work on me, and he suggested it was a slap tear from the initial injury. And after the second injury, my mind immediately went to, all right, this is probably a full labrum tear. I need to go get an MRI to really see what this is like. So I have my MRI results here. We'd love to talk through this with you guys and kind of get a general understanding of what the doctor said. I did go see the doctor, so she did interpret this to me. So this is not just my layman terms going through this all. So the initial indication is a superior glenoid labrum lesion on the left shoulder, an initial encounter with an unspecified dislocation of the left shoulder joint. The rotator cuff, there is a supraspinatus and infraspinatus. The supraspinatus tendinosus with an intermediate grade articular surface insertional tearing of the mid-posterior fibers, approximately 1.2 centimeters in AP diameter. This infraspinatus tendon demonstrates a mild tendinosis with a discrete tear. Luckily, the subscapularis and the teres minor are intact. But essentially what that says is my rotator cuff has a 1.2 centimeter tear in it. Now that could be just on the surface, or it could be straight through. The MRI doesn't notify that. The long head of the bicep tendon, there's a presumed accessory head on the long head bicep tendon. There's no definite tear, but what the ortho surgeon or the ortho doctor told me was it is abnormal to have an accessory tendon at the top of your bicep. If you think about biceps, they are 2. That's why it's called a bicep. Instead of a tricep, your tricep has 3 tendons or 3 muscles in there. So for the bicep to have an accessory tendon, I'm either super special or there's a tear at the top of the long head of the bicep. But they won't know until they go in there with the camera, whether that's through an orthoscopic method or what have you. So moving down to the labrum, there is a linear increased signal with the superior labrum concerning for a short segment flap tear. Additionally, there is marked irregularity of the inferior labrum concerning for tear. Luckily, the full cartilage is intact, but basically what that means, there's a slap tear and there's a labrum tear inside of that area. So the impressions from that, the findings are concerning for an inferior glenoid labral tear, as well as a short segment slap tear. There's a small Hill-Sachs impaction fracture. Basically, that's what happens anytime you have a dislocation. The ball head, essentially, of your humerus, it pops out. So if you're like this and it dislocates, that top part of your humerus kind of impacts that connection point, and a Hill-Sachs fracture just implies that, hey, there's been a rubbing or a movement of that bone, and sometimes that chips off the bone, sometimes it's just a lesion. So this just says there's a small Hill-Sachs impaction fracture there, just notating that there has been a dislocation. The supraspinatus tendinosis with the intermediate grade articular surface insertional tear. That is just fancy words for a rotator cuff tear. And then there's an attenuation of the auxiliary pouch glenohumeral ligament, suggesting a low-grade injury. That, again, part of that dislocation, that auxiliary pouch in there. And then finally, the duplicated tendinosis structure at the bicipital groove entrance, suggesting an accessory head of the bicep brachii. Like I just previously said, you can't tell directly from there that it's a tear, but it is highly unlikely to have an accessory tendon at the top part of your bicep. So potentially a bicep tear at the front head or the top part of the long head of the bicep. So all in all, you have 3, potentially 4 tears inside of this shoulder, accompanied with the dislocation. What all that means is that I have to go see an orthopedic surgeon on the 27th to get this kind of looked at by him, so that he can decide at what time you want to do the surgery and the extent of the surgery. I don't know if they can tell exactly how many anchors to put in for the labral tear, or exactly what all they want to do to fix that shoulder. There are multiple options when you have an injury like this. Because I'm younger, because I'm male, because I have a high likelihood to dislocate it again with how active I am, they did suggest for me to go ahead and get the surgery, as opposed to if I was maybe 5-10 years older and I wasn't as active. They may just be prescribing PT and saying, hey, cope with the pain and do PT until you feel like you have some similar range of mobility. But because I am younger, because I am male, I don't know why that plays a factor into it, but I think males have a higher likelihood of dislocating the shoulder after one initial injury. They advise I would go ahead and get that surgery to reset that labrum, to fix that whole part of the shoulder. That being said, that's a long process of recovery. Essentially, you're in a sling for 6 to 8 weeks without load bearing, and then you're moving into a time of progressive weight training to move that shoulder back into a place where you can move. There will be some atrophying of the arm during that recovery process. The point of this channel is that I want to explore what that recovery process looks like, what movements and what programs and what workouts that I can do beforehand to strengthen up all of the muscles around it so that it doesn't atrophy as bad, and that I have a foundational strength to build back upon as we do grow and get into the recovery process. So follow me along as we go through that. I'll go through each step. From now, after having the MRI done and the readings, understanding what has happened, to the conversation with the ortho surgeon, what workouts I'm doing between them. Now come the new year, what surgery looks like, what that process is like, documenting that whole stage, surgery itself, post-op, and then the next year of 2024, building back to a state of normalcy and the shoulder recovery process. So it's gonna be a fun ride, understanding programming, getting back to a full range of motion, what works, what doesn't work as far as workouts, what hurts, what helps, and hopefully this is going to be a journey that many people can kind of look at and see that an injury, whether it's small or large, doesn't just ruin your entire CrossFit career or working out in general, that you can still get back to being active and working out and doing something you love, even though you've had an injury. So follow me along for this journey. I hope it's going to inspire not only you, but inspire me to continue to stay at it. And this is a kind of accountability, which is a camera in my face. I'm going to be forced to do it more often. So it's going to be a fun ride. So let's get into it.